Conspiracy theories always connect all the great conditions in history. The tragedy of the Titanic ship was also one that did not escape conspiracy theories. For years people have talked about the Titanic, which was very hard to sink into the tragic Islam of April 1912. However, according to the knowledge of some of the sinking ships, it turned out that it was not the Titanic, but its Olympic twin. The large ark built by Harland and Wolff at Belfast, Iran, for the White Star Line was released on May 31, 1911, after it was completed on April 2, 1912. The ship was docked in the Maritime to its first voyage on April 10, 1912. At that time the Titanic was scheduled to sail from Southampton, England, with a stop at Cherbourg, France, and Queen's downtown, Ireland, to raise more passengers. The giant of the sea then visited the ocean towards New York, United States. History recorded, on April 14, 1912, middle of the night, the Titanic destroyed an iceberg and caused damage to the ship, so the sea water filled the bedroom, the engine room, and ship cabin. Within 2 hours 40 minutes, the Titanic sank to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. This terrible accident made the story of Titanic become known throughout the world. Many people wondered what actually caused the wreckage of the ship carrying 2,224 passengers and a crew. There are those who call Tita, tuned to hit an iceberg due to the White Star Line leader, J. Bruce Ismay. He took the ship to full speed to arrive on time. The Titanic, headed by Captain Edward Smith, then increased his speed. Other reasons include the fact that the owner of the ship tower does not have binoculars. In 1912 there was no sonar system in the world to detect anomalies around the ship like today. Instead, the crew must use binoculars. Put aside the film Titanic where the crew uses binoculars but the dark sea is blocked at night. In fact, on the Titanic, there were no binoculars, or rather binoculars could not be used. Why? This is because a sailor named David Blair, who was a crew member of the Titanic, did not participate in the voyage to death. Blair is the officer responsible for a room containing binoculars for the crew. Blair's inclusion in the voyage was very sudden, namely when the seconds of the ship was about to sail. Worse, Blair forgot to give the room key to the other crew. As a result, during the Titanic voyage, as without eyes and only relied on the intuition of the ship's captain, Edward Smith. In addition, they also allegedly did not report on the increase of icebergs on time, so that the ships were late in their direction. The crew also did not see the small wave marks around the ice, due to the lack of sea atmosphere that night. However, the wretched ship might not be the Titanic. When the Titanic was built, the White Star Line also made another large ship that was thought to be the twin Titanic. Olympic, the sister of the Titanic, is one of 3 luxury White Star Line ships built by Harland and Wolff. The third is HMHS Britannic. The difference between Olympic and its twin lies in the aisle of the Titanic deck, which is made of steel barriers and window sockets. That change allows more space on the front of the ship. Furthermore, the hallway on the B deck of the Titanic was also reduced so that more space could be used for the cabin. Olympic began its first campaign on June 15, 1911, covering the same route with the Titanic, and arrived in New York on June 21, 1911. Unfortunately, at the Olympic Games the British cruise ship, HMS Hawke, arrived on September 20, 1991, near the Isle of Wight. The accident resulted in 2 large openings on the right side of the ship and sea water containing 2 watertight compartments. Not only that, but the propeller is also damaged. The Olympic Society was able to return to Southampton in the conference. Another fact, a journalist named Senna Milani revealed that the Titanic sank because of fire. Milani, who had studied and explored the sinking of the Titanic for 30 years, was surprised to examine photographs of the Titanic before leaving port of Southampton. He found a large black stain on the right side of the Titanic. The cause of the black stain is the furnace as a producer of the power of the ship's propellers. The severity of the furnace for 3 consecutive weeks heats the right side of the ship's hull and causes the iron material of the stomach to become vulnerable to reduce the density of the metal by 75%. Unfortunately, when it hit a chunk of ice, the vulnerable right side of the stomach hit and caused the Titanic to sink quickly. If there is no case, then the right hull of the ship's metal can still withstand friction with chunks of ice. The results of other analyses are related to the number of lifeboats in Titanic ships. Actually, the victims of the Titanic can be minimized with lifeboats. The designer of the Titanic, Alexander Carlisle, said that with as many passengers as possible, it must be balanced with the number of lifeboats with a minimum of 60 pieces. But in reality, the Titanic only had 20 lifeboats. The reason is really naive because if the ship is equipped with 60 lifeboats, it will reduce the aesthetics of the ship because the lifeboats will be piled up messy on the ship's deck. So, the sinking of the Titanic, nicknamed "Even God Can't Drown It," is true because humans themselves made human errors so that the Titanic sank. A writer, Robin Gardiner, put forward a horrendous conspiracy theory. Robin argued that the ship wrecked in the Atlantic Ocean in April 1912 was Olympic, not Titanic. In his book entitled Titanic, A Ship That Never Drowns, Robin stated that the Olympic disguised the Titanic and deliberately reconciled to disperse insurance. The theory was stated by the author based on the fact that HMS Hawke blamed Olympic for the accident that hit the 2 ships. As a result, the White Star Line is billed as a bill of expenses, compensation, and losses during Olympic operations. Meanwhile, the insurance company used by the White Star Line, Lloyd's of London, allegedly refused to pay the claim. So it caused the Titanic's first repairs and departures. In this connection, Robin called White Star Line intentionally exchanged parts of Titanic ships and installed them on Olympics. Robin also stated that his income was based on the fact that the Titanic sea trials in the sea were several hours long. Astara Olympic for 2 days. The author also suggested that the Titanic did not conduct speed trials. This was alleged because the ship would be replaced by the Olympics. In addition, Robin also suspected that the ship was shipwrecked not because of the collapse of the iceboat. Instead, it was the Salvation Pal which tried to hide inside the building. The man believed that the ice shelter was not able to produce damage that could drown the Arkansas. As long as the Titanic sank, the problem fired into the air had a color that was incompatible with the shipping code. So that the California ship, which at that time was not far from the Titanic, was supposed to think they were doing a celebration. Although Robin's books sell well in the market and are included in the best-selling categories, many online readers assume that the novel is not good. Meanwhile, an expert on marine affairs, Dr. Robert Ballard, who found a carcass in the sea area, remains a certainty that the sinking pavement was Titanic.